The world is shaken when shocking details emerge about Charlie Kirk's killer. Tyler's father was the one who turned him in. The betrayal of blood for the sake of truth and safety stunned many, forcing people to wrestle with the weight of parental responsibility. And while that story unfolds in America, we have our own Nigerian version, a respected father, burdened by fear, stepping forward to warn authorities about his son's dangerous path. Picture Abuja on a hot afternoon, a light convoy weaving through traffic as hopeful visa seekers queue at the U.S. Embassy. A black Prado arrives, and from it emerges an elderly man in a crisp linen agbada, his presence commanding quiet respect. Guards nod, gates open. Inside, cool air and soft carpets replace the heat. Clutching a slim, worn folder, he steadies himself, knowing the meeting ahead demands painful honesty. Welcome back to Folktales channel, where we unpack real stories that test families, systems, and the choices people make. Before we begin, please hit subscribe, like this video, and share with your loved ones. It helps more viewers find these stories and keeps this community growing. Handshakes with tight faces. No small talk, no polite chatter about weather or politics, just a heavy silence pressing down on the room. The officials sit forward, pens ready, but their eyes betray unease. The old man lowers himself into the chair, his hands trembling slightly though his reputation is one of composure. He shuts his eyes, as if bracing against a storm, then exhales slowly and speaks the kind of sentence no parent ever wants to say. My son has changed. He's talking about Al-Qaeda. I fear he's planning something dangerous. The confession lands like a stone in still water. That father is Alhaji Umaru Mutallab, a man whose name carries weight in Nigeria's corridors of power. Banker, philanthropist, former government minister, his reputation is built on discipline, prudence, and national service. Few men in the country's elite circle command such respect. But today, his anguish is not about boardrooms or politics, it is about his own blood. The son at the center of his fears is Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab, once the quiet, studious boy in his household. In a matter of weeks, that same boy would shock the world, branded forever with a chilling title, the underwear bomber. Umar Farouk was born on December 22, 1986, in the bustling city of Lagos. His family's wealth and influence shielded him from the struggles of ordinary life. His childhood was marked by privilege and international schools that promised global opportunities. Teachers described him as intelligent, reserved, and obedient, the kind of student who rarely drew attention but quietly excelled. Unlike many teenagers caught up in nightlife or city distractions, Umar preferred books, prayers, and long hours of solitude. When he moved to the United Kingdom, he carried this same quiet discipline with him. At University College London, where he studied engineering and business finance, he blended into the crowd of international students. He was polite to classmates, never confrontational, but his religious devotion stood out. He spent much of his time at the mosque and eventually rose to become president of the Islamic Society, guiding discussions, organizing events, and providing leadership for fellow believers. Behind the calm exterior, however, subtle shifts were taking place, shifts that British intelligence undermined. His name appeared on their radar once or twice, but never with enough weight to trigger alarms. Perhaps the child of a nobody Nigerian could. But an elite. You see, Umaru Mutallab was no ordinary banker or politician. He was chairman of First Bank of Nigeria and a former government minister. He stood among the nation's financial and political elite. His influence stretched across boardrooms and diplomatic circles, his name synonymous with wealth and prestige. Farouk's mother, Aisha, came from Yemen. Within Umaru Mutallab's large family of 16 children, Farouk was the youngest. In May 2009, Umar Farouk attempted to return to the United Kingdom, a country that had shaped much of his young adulthood. His plan was to take a short life coaching course, a program that on the surface looked harmless, even ordinary. But by then, subtle warning signs were starting to gather around him. British authorities, already tightening their security nets after years of terror threats, noticed inconsistencies and chose caution. His visa application was quietly refused. No dramatic headlines, no public scandal, just a decision stamped in silence. Beneath that silence, however, another measure was taken. Umar Farouk's name was discreetly added to a watch list. That meant he was no longer welcome, barred from stepping foot again in the United Kingdom. For a young man of privilege who once moved freely between continents, the rejection was more than an inconvenience. It was a closed door, and perhaps, a wound to his pride. Friends would later say he grew more withdrawn, speaking less about ambitions and more about faith, discipline, and identity. That summer, as other young graduates chased careers or traveled for leisure, Umar's path veered. His compass pointed southeast, away from London's streets of opportunity, toward Yemen, a land already known for its troubled mix of tradition, poverty, and radical teachings. In August 2009, he enrolled at Yemen University, an institution watched closely by international observers for its links to extremist ideology. This shift was not just geographical, it marked a turning point in his journey. Where Britain had quietly pushed him out, Yemen opened its arms. And in that desert land, amid voices of radical clerics and underground movements, the seeds of his transformation deepened. What began with a denied visa became the doorway to a far more dangerous chapter. He enrolled at Yemen University, an institution in Yemen already carrying a shadowy reputation. To outsiders it looked like a center of Islamic learning, a place where young men memorized scripture and debated theology. But beneath the surface, whispers linked it to hardline teachings, to students who left not only with knowledge but with sharpened radical views. For Umar Farouk, fresh from rejection in the UK, the university became more than a school, it was a doorway into a different world. Here he encountered Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, the branch of the terrorist network gaining strength in Yemen's rugged terrain. American officials later concluded that he attended training camps, places hidden in remote valleys where recruits learned more than doctrine. He likely met operatives who spoke of global jihad, of sacrifice, of striking enemies far from the battlefield. Among those voices was Anwar al-Awlaki, the radical cleric whose words carried both charisma and menace. Some say Awlaki guided him personally, others argue AQAP operatives crafted the mission. What is certain is this: Yemen became the crucible. It was there that Umar Farouk's doubts hardened into resolve, where his mission was shaped, and where the deadly device was prepared. By November 2009, his father in Abuja was desperate. The rumors had grown louder, the silences more unsettling. Friends whispered of Farouk's new companions, his words carried a sharpness that frightened even those who loved him. Sleepless nights weighed on Alhaji Umaru Mutallab until he resolved to act. He went personally to the U.S. Embassy, a man of stature humbled by worry. In a private room, he laid bare his fears. His son was in Yemen, his son had changed, his son had turned extreme. The officials listened carefully. His statement was written down, the concern formally logged. In response, Umar's name was added to a large intelligence database, a place where suspicions live but often drown among millions of other entries. But crucial steps never followed. His valid U.S. visa remained untouched, granting him permission to board planes bound for America. His name never reached the strict no-fly list that could have barred him from air travel altogether. The system recorded the father's anguish but failed to act on it. The dots, Yemen, extremism, a direct family warning, were all present. Yet no one in the chain connected them. A month down the line, December 25, 2009. It was Christmas Day. Northwest Airlines Flight 253 lifted from Amsterdam bound for Detroit, carrying families, tourists, students, and business travelers. Almost 300 people filled the cabin, their thoughts on celebrations waiting in America. In seat 19A sat a quiet young man, Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab. To the crew he looked ordinary, wrapped in a blanket, headphones on. Yet hidden within his clothing lay something deadly, PETN, one of the most powerful known explosives, sewn into his underwear, and a plastic syringe meant to set it off. As the aircraft began its descent into Detroit, passengers suddenly heard a faint pop, like the sound of a firecracker muffled by cloth. Then came smoke, curling upward from Umar's seat, followed by sudden flames licking across his lap. Gasps turned to screams. People cried out, leaping up in confusion as the smell of burning fabric filled the cabin. Umar struggled, trying desperately to trigger the device fully, his face twisted in pain and determination. But in moments, instinct took over. Jasper Scheringa, a Dutch passenger seated nearby, hurled himself across the aisle, grabbing Umar with both hands and wrestling him down. The struggle was chaotic, smoke, fire, shouts, passengers pushing forward. Flight attendants rushed with extinguishers, dousing the flames, while others pressed blankets against the fire. Working together, crew and passengers subdued Umar, pinning his burned body to the floor. His clothes were scorched, his skin severely injured, but the worst outcome had been averted. The plane touched down safely in Detroit. 2 passengers sustained minor injuries. Umar himself was gravely burned, but everyone else survived. Investigators later confirmed the horrifying truth. This was not an accident, it was an Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula plot. The explosive device had been carefully engineered to evade airport metal detectors, a weapon meant to kill 289 people in one stroke. ACAP quickly issued statements claiming responsibility, boasting of their failed but chilling attempt. The world now knew how close Christmas Day had come to tragedy. January 2010 marked the beginning of Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab's long legal reckoning. Just weeks after the failed bombing, a U.S. grand jury formally indicted him, laying out charges that reflected both the scale of the plot and the potential devastation it could have caused. Prosecutors listed 8 counts, ranging from the attempted use of a weapon of mass destruction to the attempted murder of nearly 300 passengers and crew. The evidence was overwhelming: the damaged underwear, the syringe, eyewitness testimonies, and his own burns. For the U.S. government, the case was not just about one man but about sending a clear message to terrorist networks across the world. By October 2011, as the trial loomed, Umar stood before the court and pleaded guilty to every count. In a calm voice, he admitted his actions and even justified them as part of his allegiance to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. The courtroom atmosphere was tense, families of passengers sat watching, their faces a mixture of relief and anger. On February 16, 2012, Judge Nancy G. Edmonds delivered the sentence, for life terms plus 50 years, with no chance of parole. The punishment ensured he would never see freedom again. Today, Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab lives under one of the harshest prison regimes in the world, ADX Florence in Colorado, often called the Supermax. His existence is stripped to the bare minimum. For 23 hours a day, he is confined in a small, concrete cell where silence is constant and isolation absolute. The remaining hour is spent in a narrow outdoor cage, where a sliver of sky is his only connection to the outside world. No visits beyond strict legal counsel. No hugs. No casual conversations. For a man once moving freely between continents, luxury, and learning, this is now his reality. It is in that concrete box, with no possibility of release, that Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab will spend the rest of his life. In the aftermath, the fallout was heavy and far-reaching. There are 3 hard lessons here, lessons etched not just in the story of Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab, but in the way families, societies, and governments confront danger. A father's courage matters. Alhaji Umaru Mutallab had every reason to protect his image. He was one of Nigeria's most respected bankers, a former minister, and a man whose name carried influence across continents. Yet when faced with the possibility that his own son was sliding into extremism, he refused to hide behind pride or reputation. He walked into the U.S. Embassy and spoke the unthinkable: his son might be planning something terrible. Few parents could muster such honesty, especially when wealth and power could have offered denial or silence. His act remains a striking example of responsibility over self-preservation. Radicalization can cross borders quietly. Umar Farouk's journey shows that extremism is not confined to a single place. He moved from Lagos to Abuja, then to London, and finally Yemen. Each step looked ordinary: elite schools, international study, student leadership. Yet behind the normal milestones, isolation deepened and his views hardened. Radicalization rarely arrives in one dramatic leap, it creeps in through small decisions, shifting influences, and echo chambers that reinforce fear and resentment. His path reminds us that vigilance requires looking not just at sudden changes, but at subtle, cumulative ones. Intelligence is only as good as the connections we make. The information existed. British authorities had flagged him. His father issued a direct warning. His name appeared in an American database. But the dots stayed scattered. No-fly lists were not updated. His visa remained valid. Only after the near tragedy of Flight 253 did governments re-engineer their systems. Watch lists became sharper, data sharing improved, and full-body scanners appeared at airports worldwide. If stories like this interest you, please subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. Your engagement helps us bring more true stories to more people.